Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Batter's Box podcast. I'm your host, Nick Kemper. I have Carson Evans, a hitting coach from Driveline. Carson, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. To start, this episode's going to kind of be different in the sense of we're going to really dive into one specific topic, and that's obviously going to be hitting development and how much hitting development has transpired and evolved from 2015 really, which is not that long ago, but in the short scheme of things, it seems like forever ago based on how much things have changed. So to start, Carson, people see Driveline, and depending on what their view of it is, it's either super controversial or super right in the sense of Major League Baseball is contracted with you guys. There's a lot of professional players, high-level players that go to you guys. Talk to us about what exactly Driveline hitting development plan is. And how it's different from what else is out there.
Yeah. Our big thing on the hitting side for Driveline is just being basically as data-driven and objective with our feedback and our plans as we possibly can be. We want to collect data pretty much as often as we possibly can, test and retest with that data to make sure we're making the right adjustments just based on the facts, and then these adjustments are working over shorter, month and a half periods and longer periods throughout the season, off season, etc.
You mentioned the objective part and being data driven. A lot of old players, maybe not a lot of old players, but there are some old players and some people that you see on Twitter that kind of push back on that. They kind of get upset at basically data driving the game, being the ultimate factor in game time decisions, and in what managers do. They say analytics is the enemy. What is your kind of take to push back on that and say hey, analytics isn't the enemy, it's just another tool to use? Because a lot of guys will say feel, go off of feel, feel's the most important part of the game. We're taking that part away from the players. What can you say to kind of dispel that?
Yeah. I guess the way I think about the analytics, as people like to call it, is it's just more context for us to use, for players to use, to make themselves better, to understand maybe where they're lacking, exactly what areas are, maybe holding them back or how they're excelling. It's not so much that we only go by only the numbers, all the time. The number says this, so it has to be this. It is more context for us to use to help a player. And then what happens is we can just turn around and continuously track these numbers, these trends, on top of having some feel. It's not only ever the numbers. There is a little bit of a balance there sometimes that needs to be used in order to help athletes, to help players, to help hitters.
What are those numbers that you speak of? Because I think a lot of stuff gets lost. You have Baseball Savant, you have a whole bunch of websites now with a whole bunch of obscure stats that the common fan probably wouldn't be aware of. You have batting average, slugging percentage, and on base percentage really is the big three that everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have a whole bunch of things like xwebicon, or WRC plus, a whole bunch of stats that kind of play a part in how you guys make decisions. And then you obviously have the performance metrics of exit velocity, launch angle, EVA, attack angle. What is the thing, or what are the things that you use? Kind of talk about the tools that you use. Because I know you guys are big in Blast and HitTrax and TrackMan. How do you guys incorporate all that stuff into your hitting environment, and how do you guys relay that to players?
Yeah, it's kind of the feedback loop that I talked about of being able to look at data from a few different sources, whether it's the data on your batted ball from HitTrax or your bat tracking from Blast. You mentioned xwebicon or xwoba, so a stat that literally measures the value of your batted balls. It's probably the best stat we have when we talk about measuring offensive performance. Being able to then look at how good are your batted balls and describe with more stats and dive a little bit deeper why they are as valuable as they are. How hard are they hit? What angles are they being hit at? How often are you hitting the ball, driving it in the air, hitting the ball hard? You're hitting it often on the ground, barreled or not. That might limit your ability to provide offensive value to your team.
So when a player comes to Driveline, then you guys put him through that. Talk to us about what that assessment looks like for a player. what metrics are you telling them? Because that report can get very heavy very quick in terms of
Mhm.
all the motion capture stuff, all the force play stuff. What does that assessment look like for a player that comes, and how do you simplify that for them?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's an important piece because you mentioned it already. There's a ton of data out there, and it is super easy to get lost in some stuff that might matter, some stuff that might not matter, some stuff that just describes and adds a little bit of extra context. But when, say, a new hitter comes into Driveline day one, they come in to do their assessment, and they hop in and do some mobility screening, so we get a good idea of like some hip internal, external rotation, T-spine mobility, and then we get in the cage to go hit, warm up, and hop in our biomechanics lab, the launch pad. In there, you're taking 30, 40-ish swings, different pitch types, different pitch shapes. And by the end of it, we're getting biomechanical feedback, the way your body's actually moving in your swing. We're using blast at the same time on top of HitTrax to look at your batted balls to describe what the actual outcome is. I have a guy assess, I look through all this data, and basically my question is, what's the issue? And what is the core issue that is leading to the issues downstream? So go through all this, and the way I typically would present it to an athlete is first the actual outcome. Like, how are your batted balls? What's the issue with them? Are they, not hard enough? Are they on the ground? Are you not able to pull the ball in the air? And then from there, take it a step and talk about the actual backtracking with blast or the backtracking from our biomechanics lab, and describe how the backtracking applies to that batted ball. And from there, how does the way your body move apply to the backtracking? So it's a step-by-step, just diving a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper so they know, hey, the actual issue with my batted balls is that I don't hit them hard enough. Now I look at my backtracking and, well, my bat speed's too low, and those two things are directly correlated. I don't hit the ball hard enough because I don't swing fast. And then from there, the question is, am I moving inefficiently? Am I not strong and powerful enough based off our weight room assessment? Do I need to gain body weight, just pure physical output that's limiting my bat speed and my ability to hit the ball hard? Just for one pretty common example.
How do you assess a player's like batted ball profile based off of hit track? Because obviously you're getting feedback from a machine, and then you're able to see like metrics of exit velocity and launch angle.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then tell a guy, hey, you need the ball harder? How do you coach a guy to hit the ball harder?
Yep.
How do you develop a guy's launch angle to be more in like optimal range? How does that process work?
Yeah. So that just immediately goes into, you go from that batted ball, and then the question is like, okay, why is this lacking in this area? So some things it gives us are like your average launch angle, your top eighth, your top 12.5 hardest hit balls in play. Basically a measure of like when you catch a barrel, how hard do you hit the ball. Average launch angle when you do catch one of those barrels are some very big ones that we talk about in a lot of meetings. And so say you don't hit the ball very hard, and when you do, you hit it very low. You take it a step further and say, well, you hit the ball low because your attack angle's low, and you don't hit it hard because the bat speed's low. And we compare you to your age group. So say I'm talking to a high school junior as we're doing this. I'll compare him to high schoolers, of all the high schoolers we've had in our gym for the average of those metrics. And then also, since he likely has aspirations of playing college baseball, show him those college averages as well and say, this is where you're at. This is how you stack up right now. But if your goal is college baseball, these are like the average numbers that we need to get to. That way, once you're there, you're ready to compete.
When you say average numbers, like, are you looking at average numbers for launch angle too?
If they're an issue, it's something I'll bring up. If they're good, then it's just not something he probably needs to worry about. So I might not even mention it. It's one of those things where like I mainly want to focus on the core issues of the athlete, and it's like one or two swing mechanics related that's affecting the bat path, that's affecting the ball flight. That way they only have a couple of focuses. So if the launch angle is fine, like maybe I'll mention in passing, like, yeah, when you hit the ball hard, you hit it in the air, you're good. Or if it's on the ground, then it's like, okay, there's a reason you're hitting it on the ground. That might be a focus, depending on where you're at in that moment, depending on what the focus needs to be for the next 6 weeks.
So let's say a guy is hitting on the ground quite a bit, or he's got relatively low launch angle, or even -1. How do you then get him out of that?
If that's the main focus, say the kid swings pretty fast and it's not the bat speed that is his limiting factor, and we need to focus on the launch angles and getting the ball in the air, then we dive into the biomechanics assessment and say, okay, what is causing you to have these low launch angles? What are you doing mechanically that is maybe causing you to have a low attack angle, so you just are going to tend to hit the ball lower? Or is there something that you were doing that's affecting your bat path so that you have a pretty common miss that is causing these launch angles to be low? And then find that core mechanical reason and try and attack that through programming. That way it cleans up the path, maybe gets them uphill sooner, and creates better ball flight that's in the air, hard on the line, that's going to be more productive than the ball on the ground.
So let's say a player comes to you guys, then he's got all the tools in the world. Hits the ball 115 miles an hour. In the cage, he's awesome. Like, looks like an absolute superstar. Gets out on the field, absolute dud. How do you kind of get like training environment to mend with the actual like game side of it?
Yeah, I think what's maybe important too is for guys like this, especially if I have data from the jump of their in-game stuff, I'm going to supplement that for wherever I can, as opposed to like maybe some of the stuff they did when they came in for their assessment. That way I can understand, well, maybe when you're in the cage, you hit the ball hard, catch a top eighth, and on average it's at like a 15 degree, which is great. That's a fine spot to be. And then I look in the game and it's a 2. I'm like, okay, so there's some early signal that the thing that matters, the in-game performance, the launch angles are an issue when you hit the ball hard. So what's causing that to happen in a game? So that's one question that's important to answer. And then when we attack that in training, it's important to get as game-like as we basically possibly can as we train. So every day when our guys hit and they're in gym, they're hopping on, depending on our facility, maybe traject or eye pitch that's set up to be a very game-like environment. That way, after you've gone through your drill work, you've worked on some new movement patterns, new movement solutions that we're trying to build into your swing. We make sure we go put you in the more stressful game-like environment. That way, when you get to a real game, we get those adjustments to show up.
And tell us about what kind of that game-like environment is like, because I think a lot of guys will head to Driveline or just like in general practice, really, and be like, okay, like we're facing an 82 mile an hour arm this weekend, whatever, because we're in high school. But Driveline does it differently. Like you guys crank up that eye pitch. Some of those fastballs are coming in at 97, 98. Sliders are at 91. Like, how important is that for our player development side of things to basically not only like replicate the game like environment, but make it harder? Because I think a lot of guys get lost in the sense of, okay, make the game similar to what we're going to see very soon, but they lose the idea of, all right, the practice should be harder. Like the game should be the easy part. What do you guys do to kind of make that practice per se like really a lot harder than the actual game?
Yeah. A lot of what the guys are going to see in those eye pitch traject environments is going to be harder than what they're going to see in the game. The eye pitch is literally a better pitcher than so many arms that you could possibly see out there. Now you're training against it every single day. So like say on average in your high school junior in the season, he's going to see 84 mile an hour fastballs. Well, he won't see one when he comes in to train with us off the eye pitch or the trajectory. He won't face 84. He'll see 90, 91, 93, something like that pretty much every day in a breaking ball that's going to be better. And you might not do both pitches every day. Someday you'll just do block eaters or block breaker. Someday we'll go full on game and mix pitches, and we'll play baseball training and put you in a very difficult environment. That way, when those adjustments do start to show up in that more than your typical game-like environment, more difficult just by a little bit, enough to where you're getting challenged extra, and then the game does feel easier. And then those adjustments that showed up when you faced 92 in the cage, yeah, they're going to show up when you faced 84 in game.
You ever worry that that kind of messes with the player's confidence or player's psyche? When those players first come in, like they're not doing well right away, and a lot of those guys probably leave the cage that day or maybe for that week or even month barely striking a ball, and it takes a while to really like see, like physically see some results, and like the results don't come nearly as quick as they would like. How do you kind of battle like the emotional aspect of the player and try and get him to buy in after maybe a week or two? He was like, he's just swinging a miss.
Yeah. There's some nuance to it where there is such a thing as too difficult. If I make it so a guy literally doesn't touch a ball all day, maybe we've gone too far. So there might be a little bit of aspect of feel into that. But for one, like if it's a high school kid who wants to play college baseball and he's used to seeing 84 and he struggles with 91 on the machine, but you want to play in college, well, you better be ready to hit 90 every day. So you need to train to be ready to hit 90 as often as you possibly can. And that might be hard, and sometimes some guys do get discouraged or frustrated. That's the nature of baseball at its core, is like hitting, especially, is the hardest thing to do in sports. You are going to fail so unbelievably often. Like, yeah, sometimes you're going to get pretty frustrated with it, and that's okay. That's like human nature, in my opinion. Part of it is realizing that you're doing something really hard. A lot of the times, working on adjustments that are brand new to you, so you're trying to do something new, and those things do take time. And it's okay to be frustrated, but we're going to keep tracking the objective data as much as possible to show you, despite the fact that you're getting challenged all the time, you are still getting better.
You mentioned players who want to play in college, and we're tailoring it to high school guys here, but what are the kind of performance metrics of like exit velocity, bat speed that are kind of benchmarks for
Yeah.
a high school guy to make it to college, particularly like a higher level college player at the Division I level, or a college guy who's basically trying to make it in professional baseball? How different are those benchmarks, and how important are they? Like, are college coaches really looking at bat speed and exit velocity? Because for the longest time, it was, all right, go to a showcase, player looks athletic, he looks toolsy, and now it's like, all right, he's got to hit the ball 110 miles an hour, swing the bat 72 miles an hour. Like, how relevant is that into the college game and then into professional baseball? Probably way more relevant than in pro baseball. But then also like, what are like those reference ranges for like a 17-year-old kid who wants to play in college? Like, what are the benchmarks to kind of get there?
Yeah, it's a good point because I'm using the high school example a lot, but the same thing does apply going college to professional, minor leagues to the MLB. It scales up and up and up. Um, like, say I have a high school kid, a lot of the time the number I tell them is if you don't swing the bat 70 miles an hour and that's not in the tank, that's probably what we're going to work on until you can do it because your goal is college baseball and college average is just shy of 70 for guys we have in gym. Um, Realistically, what we like to say all the time is that bat speed is basically the ticket to entry into the next level of baseball. So if you're a high school kid who wants to play college baseball, you need to swing the bat as fast as a college baseball player. If you're a college athlete who wants to play and break into pro ball, you have to swing as fast as those minor leaguers. And what you see is that every next level of baseball, on average, swings faster than the one before. So MLB players swing the fastest, and minor leaguers next, and then college guys, and then the high schoolers. I mean, literally scales in that order because the bat speed raises your ceiling and your floor for the type of player you are. If you change nothing, but you swing 3 miles an hour faster, well, you've quite significantly changed the type of hitter you can be. Like, yeah, the high end is higher, and that's awesome, but bare minimum, if you're at your worst, like you have a floor season, your floor season just got better. And typically, you're going to tend to fall somewhere in between. As far as the, oh, sorry. As far as the some actual numbers or how much college coaches care, probably at the end of the day it depends on the program. But if you're raising your bat speed and you're hitting the ball harder, you're just going to be a more productive hitter. So whether or not a coach says, "Hey, I need a guy to swing 72," that production is pretty clear on the eyes, especially when you see it in game.
With the introduction of the transfer portal and college coaches, especially big time schools, seemingly going more to the portal and to get guys from either a lower level college or kind of just somewhere else around the country. What is the, I guess, like feedback you give to high school guys who are trying to make it? Because it seems like if you're not a top guy out of high school, you probably go junior college and develop, especially with these eligibility limits kind of getting in murky water. You don't really know exactly what's going to happen. Guys getting 2 years back. What is the like recommendation that you see or that you tell like a lot of high school guys that's like, hey, you're physically not ready because you're going to go up against 23 and 24-year-olds and you're 17 right now. Like physiologically, that doesn't make sense. Go JUCO, or is it still try and fight your way onto a big Division I campus and then maybe find your way in the transfer portal a year later? What's that process like? Because it's getting harder and harder for high school guys, it seems anyway, to break into college and then actually play right away.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you kind of said it at the very end is my advice is to go where you are going to play right away. I think that the days of I'm a freshman and I'm going to go walk on at a pretty decent D1 or I'm going to be on scholarship, but I'm not going to play as a freshman. And then they're telling me I'm going to develop and they're going to develop me. Those days are less and less common and kind of going away because you can just go to the transfer portal, get somebody who you don't have to develop as much, um, train them a little bit in your ways and the ways you like to do things, but you're getting a player who's pretty ready to play on your roster right away. Now, if you're a high school kid, with that being said, game reps are extremely valuable. You can continue to train and continue to develop as a player, do the things that we like to do at Driveline while you're playing in those games, and continuing to make yourself a better and higher ceiling player. So you should go to where you're playing. There's, in my opinion, very few cases where it's beneficial to go when you're going to sit on the bench for a year.
So my next question then, and this kind of touched on what you talked about earlier. Let's say he goes to like a junior college, Division two, Division three, right out of high school. Those are schools with substantially less money and substantially less resources in the sense of player development. There's also less data on those guys then moving forward. And we go back to launch angle and extra velo and bat speed and all that stuff. How does then like a coach from an upper level then get that information when it's not really there?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time what coaches want to see is the stats you produce. Like you might have great numbers and great tools, but we want to know if they play in game. College coaches, higher level coaches, want a guy who those tools are going to play in game. And from there, the stats are showing up very well. It probably isn't the most complicated thing to figure out why. Like you hit the ball incredibly hard very often. A college coach can probably see that when they look at your stats at the end of the year and they say you OPS'd 1,000 with 13 homers and 15 doubles and whatever your numbers may be. And there's very clear signal there that you dominated at the lower level. Pretty good chance you're ready to move up from the D2 to the D1 or the JUCO to the mid-major, whatever it may be.
Is there ever a point where you have a guy like the levels in college baseball are what they are? I know people don't like this, but like Division One is the top of the top. Yeah, you have some exceptions in D2 and NAI where you have some really good schools, but those are the exception, not the rule. Division Two, same thing. Division Two and NAI is like the next level. Division Three is usually about the same thing. Okay. JUCOs are different. You can get JUCOs that are absolutely stacked, i.e., out of Florida, Texas, Kansas, that have incredible players on them, or you can get really, really bad ones that it's just like these are guys who just want to continue the baseball career. What exactly is the, metric or if you have a guy who is really good at Division Two and then struggles at Division One, or struggles in pro ball, whatever the case may be, is there an underlying metric there that you can look at and say like, oh, this is probably why your game didn't translate to the next level, or is it kind of just like you had a bad year?
I mean, there's always going to be a reason, right? I wouldn't say it just happens is not one I tend to think about if that's the reason why. Like, hey, bad luck. Like, yeah, there's a portion of luck built into baseball. But if you went from a great year to a not great year, there's some underlying reason, most likely in many cases, as to why. What that number may be, or what the reason or stat or whatever you want to call it may be, it probably varies from guy to guy. Maybe your numbers were great, but in D2 your strikeout to walk ratio wasn't very good, and you punched too much, and then that kind of got exposed once you went to a D1. Maybe it was a mentality thing or an approach change or lingering injury. Like there's lots of reasons that could contribute to that. And as far as why they show up, it depends on each guy. Depends on their scenario.
Kind of going back to launch angle, just because there was one thing I want to ask you. There's a video that reigns in my head whenever I think of launch angle. I don't even remember who said it. It wasn't John Smoltz, but it's a John Smoltz-like comment in the sense of there was a game, pitcher threw a high heater, like hitter swung and missed that, and the announcers were like, this is what they're trying to do, get it above the launch angle. And he never made contact. How do you kind of dispel those, or I guess that lack of education of like what launch angle is, what attack angle is? I mean, we haven't even talked about DBA. How do you kind of get that away from people when like the people just run with stuff they see on social media and it just becomes hearsay?
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, launch angle and attack angle are descriptors. every swing ever, even before we had ways to measure it 10, 20, whatever years ago, had a launch angle and had an attack angle. So a launch angle is just describing, the angle the ball is hit at contact, 0 being parallel to the ground, 10 degrees up, negative would be down. So every swing ever has had a launch angle, which you hear the term launch angle swing thrown around all the time. Well, by that definition, every single swing is a launch angle swing because it just describes the batted ball of the swing. Now, the attack angle also has every single swing has an attack angle, which is just the vertical angle the barrel is traveling at contact. So if you swing down, it's negative, flat, 0. We want athletes to swing up because when you hit the ball hard, we want you to hit it in the air, and to do so, you have to have a positive attack angle. The reason being, when your attack angle and launch angle match up, that's when you hit the ball the hardest. So if I swing with an 8-degree attack angle and I hit the ball at an 8-degree launch angle, that's going to be your hardest batted ball. So if you swing down, your hardest batted balls are going to be on the ground. So everybody does like to point to the launch angle swing. I remembered hearing it when I was still playing or in high school, and like coaches getting upset over the launch angle swing, and I didn't understand it yet then, but like knowing now that it's just another piece of context for us to use to describe batted balls and to help train hitters.
Another thing coaches, or at least other people get mad at nowadays, is when somebody strikes out or hits a home or whatever, they go right to the iPad. And there's a lot of controversy around that because people are like, hey, like just live with the result of the game for the day and make the adjustment later. How do you make adjustments in game?
Yeah, the data flow, the objective feedback that we talked about earlier is stuff that can show up in game, and the visual video is a good way some people like to do it by hopping on an iPad. And so sometimes guys will strike out and go look at the iPad and was that pitch a strike or not? Like, did I swing through a ball? Am I making good swing decisions? It's a really quick way to like find out, am I on time and am I swinging good pitches? Which is probably the first adjustment you have to make if the answer is no to either. So that's a really quick one you can check. And then the other thing is a lot of the times these guys nowadays maybe have a good idea of what they may be working on or what their issue is and what they're struggling with. It's hard to be internal in the game, and guys will like to go do it sometimes when the information is available and see like, okay, like I'm doing whatever I'm bad at again, whatever my mechanical flaw is again, and that's why I missed over the top of that ball. And then they know, okay, that's what happened. The trick is there, like sometimes you get too internal. It might be hard for you to perform in game when I'm thinking about what my body's doing.
That was going to be my next question was, do you ever find it detrimental or almost like messing with a player's psyche to have them so focus on like the granular type of the swing where immediately they're going back in the dugout and going to that iPad?
Yeah.
Kind of like thinking more broader. Like what is the difference in external versus internal cues? How do you kind of decipher when to use which one?
Yeah, the external versus internal thing is very core to Driveline's hitting philosophy. More or less, we're very big on being external as often as we possibly can. The reason being internal cueing is, we'll call it more taxing on the nervous system. Basically, it puts your nervous system on the fritz and causes you to slow down. We do not want to slow down as hitters when we play in a game. That would be quite poor for your performance. So when we step in the box, I ask hitters this all the time, is like, we're working on these mechanical adjustments. When you go hit in a game, are you thinking about them? Most of the time the answer is no, and I always hope that it is. But if you are internal in the game, then you're slowing yourself down. You're making it very challenging on yourself to think about those things and make that adjustment when you're facing a 98-mile-an-hour heater and a guy who also has the sinker and the dirty slider, whatever it may be. And you want to think about whether or not, you had enough space in your load, and as you got open into your swing, like good luck trying to focus on that. And the other part of that is in a game, like success isn't necessarily determined on your mechanics, it's the outcome of the batted ball.
What would be a good external cue for a guy? Because I know, like in the cage, let's see, like you're facing him on our hack attack, and you could tell the guy, "Hey, hit the ball in the right corner of the cage." It's gonna be the same pitch every time. What would be a good cue for a hitter in game when he doesn't know what's coming, and more often than not, like pitcher is gonna have more on him than he has on him.
Yeah. A lot of the time, it kind of gets built into approach. So like like this guy has these four pitches. Well, I can look for the fastball up and in, and it'll set me up well for if he hangs the slider, and I'm eliminating the other two pitches because they're in a different tunnel. From there, you can give yourself thinking, I'm trying to hit the ball to this part of the field as a ball flight target. So like I'm thinking fastball up and in, I'm looking to hit it off the top left corner of the batter's eye, and that'll set me up well to hit the shape and then maybe whatever secondary pitch if he hangs it. The other one is you can think part of the ball is another very common one. So like say you have a guy with a fastball that's high ride. Pretty good idea for those guys is try and hit the top of the ball because of the ride of the fastball is a little bit deceiving. So you kind of have to change your target to adjust to the pitch.
Breaking topic a little bit here, but not really. How much Driveline become global? A lot of players come from all over the world. How difficult is this, or how easy really, is this to kind of relay to players that come from all over? Is the cultural aspect different in the sense of players in Australia, for instance, are basically being taught the exact same stuff that you are, or is it kind of like, holy crap, this is a totally different, basically like teaching aspect of the game because these players are so far different in terms of how they learn?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain different philosophies that exist. And in different parts of the world, they may differ very much from the way we like to do things. The thing that I've always found very interesting is that typically when you see a player come from a different region that has traditionally a very different philosophy than the way we talk about hitting and train hitters, they come to us, it's because they want to be trained by and help us and improve with our philosophies. So they become, a lot of the time, very open to the different experience because they know what they've done, they know they want to improve, and they know they need to change. So they come to train and to change something, to get better in the end. They're open to the different philosophy because their end goal is to get better, and they believe that we can help them do so.
What does that process look like for those players that come from all over? I know that because you were on one of the I guess mission trips, if you will, to Australia. What does that process look like for a player who's 14, 15 and trying to make the major leagues in a area of the world where baseball is not the top priority or even really like a major sport?
Yeah, the Australia one it's an interesting case study, and it was a little bit different of an example because a few of us went to Australia to help run assessments for their high school age hitters. But Australia is an interesting case study on the international scale of baseball. One, for the reason that baseball there is pretty far from the biggest sport. There you have rugby, you have footy, you have golf, you have basketball, you have cricket, all taking up the bigger part of the market in sports. Baseball is much smaller. There's a smaller population of kids that play it. And it's something that they're trying to grow there. And obviously they've had some success. They've had some very talented players come from Australia, Travis Bazzana being the main namesake, of course. But you're there assessing kids who are playing a much smaller sport in a country that doesn't have college athletics. So they have to come to the States if they want to play in college. Basically not really knowing how to compare themselves to their competition that's halfway across the world, namely kids from the United States. So if they want to play in college, it's very, very difficult for them to know how they match up and how to train in order to match up by the time they are 18, 19 years old and come into the United States.
So how do they get on coach's radar then? If they're from like a town, I mean, that's, to me, that's like, trying to make the NBA from Africa, or like trying to, play the cricket professional org from here. Like, how do you get on a coach's radar in a area where it isn't a talent-rich space?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the connections. There are organizations, Baseball Australia, who are there that have some connections to, namely junior colleges is where most of these players from Australia end up right when they come to the United States, in order to basically get their foot in the door and get them a chance to come play baseball here in the States. It's quite the challenge and really a very interesting and I think generally a pretty incredible thing that they're doing is helping these kids follow their dreams when they have so many like obstacles to overcome in order to get there. Um, you see kids all the time from the United States who like they're struggling to find a school. Now imagine going halfway across the country where the average player is typically a little physically underdeveloped and behind the curve in the United States. Uh, and you have to go across the world to find a school where the coach probably isn't going to see you play one time before you show up on campus.
Tough. It also puts some things in perspective too. I think for American kids who think they have it rough, and there's a lot of guys out there that have it a lot harder.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, either way, it's difficult. Like the realm of college baseball right now is quite tough and a little bit chaotic. Um, so finding a home, and like I said before, like my advice typically is to find somewhere where you're going to play. Like that rings even more true for the kids from Australia because you go to a school and you don't play for a year or two, and now you're in a fully different country and you're out of eligibility and you came there to play baseball. So you need to find the place that's going to take the time to let you play. You can continue to develop while you're there, and then hopefully take your baseball career to the D1, D2, D3, whatever it may be that's going to suit you.
You mentioned the eligibility concern. Do you think we see a time where guys who got drafted right away out of high school and got kind of lost in the minor leagues, and now they're 24, 25, they go back to college? Because we're seeing that with guys in the NBA now, guys who literally get drafted and then either play actual NBA games or play in the G League or play overseas in Europe. Like they're now coming back to college. I think LSU's got like 2 or 3 guys now that are 24, 25 years old that got drafted and are now supposedly going to play for LSU next year. Alabama obviously had the Bedioko guy this year that actually played, and he played in the NBA. You know, is that going to be a thing that we see potentially in college baseball, and how much harder is that going to be for not just players but also coaches? Like they're not going to be able to understand or know. Okay, I got the transfer portal, I got high school guys, and now I got potentially professional guys who want to somehow come back and play in college and like quote unquote like literally step down a level. Like how hard is that going to be for everybody, really? And is that a world that we see happening?
My gut says I don't think so. Generally, I would hope that's not the case, just because yes, the professional levels are the highest levels of baseball. They get the highest priority. There's the most money, all of these things. But now there's a lot of money in college baseball to be had, and that probably adds to this conversation. But the point of college baseball is to be a student athlete. You do have to do both, and I know we're talking about the player development side of things here. And generally, that's for the 19 to 22, 23-year-old who they're in the same age bracket, roughly, competing against kids the same age, similar aspirations, similar level. Whereas if you see that change, you're going to completely change the goalposts even more than they currently are with NIL and the transfer portal. If anything, I would maybe see it start to walk back the other way, where we see the transfer portal become a little bit more strict, and would be probably surprised if we started to see professionals in college baseball.
You find that being a attractive option though for college coaches if they have that option? And I'm assuming, okay, I'm not a college coach, but I'm assuming that if I am and I have the opportunity to take a guy who's got 3 years in single A or double A, I'm going to take him over the 17-year-old who faced 84 in Wisconsin.
Depending on the program, if you have the money, maybe. I'm assuming at that point the NIL available for a guy like that is probably going to be more than what they're making in the minor leagues for a lot of people. So that might make it an attractive option for the player, but who knows if the coach wants to pay that or can pay that based off their situation in order to get a guy like that on the field for him.
Realistically, how much are guys getting paid right now in college baseball, given that most baseball programs are not money making?
It's hard to say. I think it depends on. There's probably a huge disparity, I guess I should say. Like the highest end programs, I don't know the exact dollar amount, but a significant enough amount of money that there are college athletes who stay in college at some points for another year rather than going professional because they're just going to make more money. That example maybe isn't the most common, but certainly does happen. The smaller schools where baseball is losing money sport for the athletics department, the NIL probably comes down a lot less to the actual school and department and more so to alumni and donors, I would say, in those case scenarios. So very case to case, and in general, it's not the NIL environment you see in college football or college basketball.
Yeah, for context here, UCLA is the number one baseball team in the country right now, and they're losing money. And most teams are. Like, it's not just the mid majors and low majors. Like, there are SEC teams that lose money. Missouri is not making money in baseball.
Mhm.
Um, do you, kind of touching on the same point, there are institutions as a whole. Syracuse supposedly just came out the other day. There's $1.5 billion in debt. With the increase in the money needed for maintaining a good college athletics program, do you see that becoming an issue later on for smaller schools with limited budgets and they're having to basically face the reality of they're having to cut programs and some of those programs are going to be the sports that don't make money, baseball being one of them.
Yeah, I feel like it happens every year. I see a few schools get their baseball program cut. It happened to me when I was playing in college baseball. I was at Holy Names, and I was there for the last year. The whole school shut down. So even a step further than just getting your baseball program cut, which that alone is a terrible, terrible feeling. Believe me, and quite difficult to deal with. And unfortunately, with kind of the nature of baseball being a money losing sport for a lot of programs, I feel like every year I see more and more programs getting cut, which is generally just bad for the climate of college baseball, as you see less and less opportunities coming up and it being harder to get these opportunities on top of it.
How much of a barrier to entry do you see that being for kids who want to play baseball? Because we talk, I mean, draft got cut down after COVID. It went from 40 to 20 rounds. And also, same thing with COVID, more programs got cut. I remember Boise State brought their program back. And then after that spring was over, they cut it again because they couldn't afford it with the pandemic. How much of a barrier to entry do you see that becoming for kids who are younger and knowing, okay, baseball isn't a money making sport, and as a result, like there are less and less spots available for me at the top, whether that be college or professional. How hard is that to basically continue to grow the game? 'Cause that's all Major League Baseball, or not all, but one of the big things that Major League Baseball has been trying to do for the past 10, 12 years since Manfred stepped in is basically grow the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it becomes more challenging when there's one, literally less roster spots available in college baseball because programs are gone, the draft is shorter, so kids are in college for longer, or more kids are going to college. The general talent in all of baseball, college baseball, professional baseball, is getting higher and higher and higher. So by default, you already just have to be a better player because we're better at training players than we ever have been. Players are playing at a higher level than they have right now, than they have in the history of the sport. So the barrier to entry into college baseball is higher than it ever has been. Just looking at the pure talent level it takes, and then more guys are staying there. More guys are going to that level than they have in the past.
Last thing I want to touch about too is now going back down the youth side. Youth baseball has become incredibly monetized. Back 30 years ago, like I think the big saying was like you play Legion ball or you play town ball like with your buddies and you have fun for a summer and then in the fall you play football. And now it's like you want to be really good in any sport, really. Like you have to specialize at a young age and then also have the resources to go get the training that you need to develop from 7 years old to when you're 18, and then from there, like then you can go about your own separate ways, whether it's college, professional, whatever the case may be. But we're seeing more and more parents that also get publicized on social media, which isn't a great great thing at times, of just like the amount of money that goes into even just a weekend for like a travel ball team. Like you have the entry fee for the tournament, then you have the gate fees for the parents and siblings and anybody else who wants to come see like their relative play. Then you have concessions and hotels and flights and travel and the gear. I mean, my gosh, the gear. Every kid nowadays has two sliding mitts and an elbow guard and a shin guard and three bats. Like all that stuff piles up, and it becomes to the point where some parents just can't afford it, and like as a result, their kid then loses an opportunity to play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an impact do you see that having on the game? Like, do you see that already happening? Like, what's that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's many cases of that happening, and generally, it's more upsetting because I find it very important. The MLB finds it important to grow the game, and the culture of youth baseball right now seems to not be the most for promoting that. Um, with it being as expensive as it is, like at the end of the day, we should want as many kids who want to play baseball as possible to be able to play baseball. Because at that age, it is just a game. Like the professional level, yes, it's a business. The college level, there are more business aspects to it than there have been in the past. Um, but at the youth level, baseball is just that. It's a game. And you should be able to go play baseball with your buddies and have fun and enjoy it as much as you want to. And if you want to go play basketball or football in the off season because you're 11 years old and you enjoy sports and you want to do those things, it should be completely accessible, in my opinion, for you to go play multiple sports and enjoy playing those sports with your buddies. And when you get older, yes, the need to specialize, in my opinion, there becomes more prevalent, but not as young as I think it seems to be the current trend.
Is there an age that you think is like right about the time for kids to specialize? I know it varies by the athlete, but in terms of like, okay, like we should probably transition here from three to two or even one sports, getting the age of.
Yeah. It does depend on the kid. I think before high school, there's almost never a need to specialize into one sport. Um, you're so young at that age, your taste for what sport you might want to play when you're 13 versus 17 could very well change. Um, I would mostly encourage younger than high school kids to play whatever sports they want to. And then when you get into high school, depending on how serious you are about college baseball, I think is when that conversation probably becomes more prevalent because, say, I'm a high school junior and I weigh 150 pounds. And going into the baseball season, I need to gain, I don't know, 15 pounds over the next year before my senior year, 20 pounds before my senior year, because it'll significantly improve my ability as a baseball player. Oh, but I also play basketball and I'm going to go run so much every single day and make it almost impossible for me to gain weight, or maybe I'll lose weight right before that baseball season. And at that point, it becomes a little bit detrimental to your chances of playing college baseball. When we get to that age, that conversation can probably happen. Generally, I'm still probably for high school kids playing multiple sports. But if your goal absolutely is college baseball and you're doing something that's fully standing in the way of that, then that's a conversation I think that can be had.
Last question here. Give me your top three athletes all time. This is totally random, but I asked every guest.
Top three athletes of all time? Oh, man. Michael Phelps,
Whoa.
Tiger Woods, and Tom Brady.
So is this on pure dominance then? Sounds like.
Yes, I think they are two of them certainly. Tiger, there might be a debate, but to
Really?
me, they stand away. I hear the debate between Tiger and Jack. To me, Tiger's the greatest golfer of all time.
Yeah, I think so.
The other two, I don't think there's anywhere near a debate for who the greatest is in their sport, and to me, that makes them the greatest. Like Jordan is a great answer, in my opinion. LeBron is a great answer, but it's such a hot debate that it's hard for me to say they're the greatest because one of them doesn't just stand alone as the greatest in their sport. To me, the other three do. And in baseball, everybody has a different goat. The eras are so different. The game changes so often that it's almost impossible to say who the best baseball player ever is.
Yeah, I feel like every question I ask, I never hear a swimmer, period. So that was good to hear. And then I always end up hearing Jordan. I never hear LeBron, but I always hear about Jackson too.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you can make a case for like pure athleticism, like that guy had it more than anybody else.
He was probably the most athletic person, I think, we've seen, if I had to say.
Awesome. All right. Well, Carson, thank you very much for coming on. This is Carson Evans from Driveline Baseball, giving us a little hitting snapshot of what hitting development looks like today. Thank you again. This has been Beyond the Batter's Box podcast. I'm your host, Nick Hemper. We'll see you next week.